Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Soul Revolution. I'm super excited to have my guest today. We've been trying to get this on the books for a while, but it was obviously all meant to happen today. Hannah Ryan is here. She is a Pilates instructor and teacher trainer. She we'll get into this a bit today, but I definitely met Hannah for a reason. During right before COVID, and I dove into Pilates during COVID. It has changed my entire life. It was sort of a permission slip as well to not do all the things and be really tough on my body and do the type of exercise that I actually enjoy. So it's changed my body, it's changed my life, and I'm just super excited to have you here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Such an introduction.
So let's get started. I saw you shared a meme today that was like when people ask me if Pilates is like yoga. It was Killian Murphy like rolling his eyes like I don't have time for you.
Yeah. And
So
like
maybe just
oh sorry. A friend of mine reshared it then and she has a yoga studio and she was like, both are great, but they're different. But that's the point. It's not to bring one down. It's just that they're so different when you do them. So yeah,
and
it's
I didn't when I first started with you, like I went to your workshop in person and then I got into mat Pilates with you online during lockdowns. Like I really didn't know what to expect. I knew like for mat Pilates you used a mat. I had been on a reformer before, but they're totally different even between the two of them. So maybe just for people who haven't done it or aren't that aware, like what is the background of Pilates? What is the point? What have you found and love about it?
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, as you said, there's a big difference between the equipment. So you can do mat work, you can do mat work with small equipment. Then you go into the big equipment. So you have reformer, ladder barrel, Cadillac, chair. There's a lot of Pilates equipment, and there's a lot of small, really specialized equipment that kind of goes lost unless you're in a classical studio as well, like stuff for your toes and your fingers and your neck. But the things that we know more commonly are mat work and reformer. And people tend to get really obsessed with reformer. Like if they're a reformer student, they let you know it's like, oh, I do reformer. And then someone else is like, oh, well, I know the real Pilates, I do the mat work. You know, so people get really like in their lane with it, even though, as you said, they're quite different. The base of it and the foundation of it shouldn't be different. Like as in Pilates, we want to learn how to find and use our core and stabilize our shoulder girdle, our pelvic girdle, and the breath work. So setting up the bones is not more important than the muscle work, and the breath work is not more important than the bones or the muscle work. They all work together. So if your bones are in the correct alignment for the exercise that you want to do, in a neutral, for example, because all other ranges are important in other situations as well. But as a base for Pilates, if you're in a neutral spine position, you're going to have the most length front, back, and sides of your body around your trunk. So if we're thinking about our spine, the alignment is there. There's the most length or the most contract potential that we can have for those muscles in that position. And you can't contract the muscles without your breath work. So it's a chicken and an egg thing, but we've got three of them going around. So it's people are always like, what should I work on? Or I don't understand the breathing yet, this, that, or the other. But if you're in the right position and you're feeling the right places, you are doing the breathing. It can just take a while. But that brings you into the mind body side of Pilates as well. So it's very, very technical. Two of the principles in Pilates are precision and concentration. There's also focus. So three of them are all focused on your mind being really, really integrated through the whole thing. But for that reason, then it's like a meditation. So Joseph Pilates invented Pilates in World War II. He was rehabilitating soldiers. He opened a studio in New York, was working with dancers primarily, but then anyone who wanted in there. So he has a fascinating story because he started out as a very sick child. He had rickets and scoliosis of the spine, and he just from a young age, he's one of these freak people who got obsessed with physiology, anatomy. As a young kid, he'd ask for those books. So he essentially created this thing himself that didn't exist yet. So it takes from yoga, Tai Chi, and martial arts to the layering techniques of martial arts. So I always teach Pilates in courses. I try and stay away from dropping classes as much as possible for the reason of that layering technique being so important. So you learn certain layers, they all affect other layers. We only go up a few layers once we've like corrected the fundamental layers, but that's where it gets really satisfying, and that's where we should move from that place of stability and strength and ease Anyway, so to answer your question, Pilates started to rehab, to tone, to make stronger, to make more flexible. He was trying to find the perfect balance of a lot of disciplines that already existed. He also took from boxing because boxing do a lot of rotation and spiral, but he wanted to balance that out. So then golfers use it and tennis players use it. So you can see these patterns. So you're looking prehab, rehab, you're looking for people who want their abs to show for the first time in their life and they haven't found an exercise that did that yet. You're looking for someone who wants to get flexible, but maybe gymnastics doesn't suit them, or maybe the stretches they're doing before and after their runs are getting them nowhere because they're still injured. So you're looking at a full body approach all of the time. And even though other disciplines are amazing in lots of ways, and Pilates wouldn't exist without them, and Pilates will help those other disciplines, it's the foundation of all movement. So whether you like it or not, they're the things you should learn for weightlifting, for swimming, for running, for cycling. Do you know that? So people would be like, oh, I'm not into it, this, that, or the other. But usually, if there's an injury or something that makes you need to be into it, you do get into it later. But I get it as well, because some people who are really into it, like the way you said, you fell for it quite quickly. I did as well. And I started off as a complete gym person, always with PTs and weights, and I haven't done that now in years. Never thought I would stop doing that. But I hope that answers your question. There's a lot of things I touched on.
Yeah. No, I think that was the thing. Like, for me, when it really was like divine timing, right? Because I had done the workshop with you and then like lockdown started and I was like, what do I do? And I would go outside, and at the time I was actually working with a trainer and getting back into running and doing all the things. And I was having like aches in my body that had always been there, or like injuries that I had from years ago, but they were kind of flaring up. And I was like, I need to do something different. And then I found you. And like for me, Pilates has just been like, it's definitely an intense workout for mind and body, and just in a different way. But it also is like this mobility and rehab, like you said, at the same time. And all my aches and pains have gone away and like not come back. And same as you, like I haven't been lifting. For me, there's a heavy masculine energy of like lift, lift. Oh, we have to like increase weights, and that I never really resonated with anyways. I was like, why can't I just go to the gym and like do what I want to do that day? Why does it have to like get better and better and better? But funny enough, like there is an element of that in Pilates because you do build. And I remember like doing the first 34 moves challenge with you. And like the first time, I think I could only do like half of the moves, right? And some of it's just I physically couldn't. And some of it was I knew my form wasn't there yet, right? And you tell us like, don't hurt your neck or don't push, like it'll happen in time. But I don't know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just Pilates, like you burn 100 calories and like it doesn't do anything. And there's this massive misconception like, no.
Here, that you've
It's
touched on something that I don't even know how to formulate this thoughtfully, but when people talk about burning calories, I just think what an impossible thing to measure. And it's so ingrained into our society, but like, as in, if you don't sleep right, your body's going to be in protective mode and it's not going to burn calories. If you've put a lot of stress in your body, whether that's sugar or alcohol or your mind, whatever it is, your body will hold on to calories. Your body's going to hold calories because your brain burns glucose and your liver burns glucose. It's going to hold on to them. So unless we're all in a peak state all the time and we can count our calories from our food, there's no way of counting that. When people are looking at their watch in my Pilates classes, I'm like, oh, but sure, your muscles don't work that way. We're like targeting our slow twitch muscle fibers primarily to stabilize at the start. Then we work a little bit more in some exercises towards the end of the class. But it means that your calories are not being burnt until the next day or the third day. They're not being burnt at that moment. So it just, I think, obviously it's been a great tool for a lot of people to get into fitness and start measuring, and it keeps them accountable. But really, if you think about it, it's absolutely impossible to track calories. Did I sleep well? What size am I? What body makeup do I have? Do I have extra vertebrae? Because we all have different amounts of vertebrae that aren't the anatomical model. Do I have extra quad muscles? Because some people have 5 quads, some people have 4. So in that case, am I better at burning really fast, or do I burn a bit less? And then in that way, if you think about that, someone's eating a chicken breast and thinking there's a certain amount of calories, but what size was that chicken? Was that chicken running around all day? Was it big, small? Was it like there's so how could you possibly measure it? But yeah, I think the beauty of Pilates is that you keep feeling the rewards for 2 days after. So you're in the right position. And you spoke about the 34 moves there. So the 34 moves is the original sequence of Pilates. So the classical Pilates move series of exercises that Joseph Pilates came up with. So that version you build day one, you build through until you get all of the 34 moves in a flow. And his idea, which he's a great book called Return to Life Through Contrology. So he was a German man. It's been translated into English. It's a really small but really nice and really inspiring book. And he talks about 34 moves, which is what inspired me to make the challenge. So I have it from day 1 to 34. And as far as I can see, nobody else has that available. Usually they'll just do workshops on the 34 moves. But you do that, as you said, like you're building, there's progress. It's like the idea of every time you go to the gym, you might add on another weight or every few sessions. But then there's the other side of Pilates where you pick a level and you go to that level and then you know the moves you can do within that level. So you don't have to do the 34 moves series. That was just something I particularly loved in Pilates. And a lot of my clients, like you get hooked in that way because you are
Mm.
feeling progress. But I think the nice thing is you're feeling progress, but you're feeling better and better while also feeling your muscles in the right places. Nothing is getting tighter, nothing's getting stiffer. Where often, if you're getting way better at running, which this isn't a bad thing, way better at running, way better at weightlifting, whatever it is, you suffer the consequences and you go for massages and you find a different way to balance it. But within the 34 moves, it all balances itself. So there's just amazing results. And I always remember back as well to when you came to that workshop in Dublin. It was like a 1 day retreat. It was the first time I tried to do that with the manager of the studio there. We kind of did it quite last minute, and you had won a space, which was mad because I remember you so clearly in that class as well. And we'd never met before. And then all of a sudden you're in all of the classes and we're in touch for loads of different reasons, like both of us on our health journeys and having similar interests and the mind side of exercise, because often in the Pilates world, that mind side gets left to yoga. It's like, oh, the meditation. Whereas that's a huge part of Joseph Pilates' teachings. And this is the guy that came up with it. As much as people argue contemporary Pilates has moved away from that in ways, like it could just be more functional because that was really trendy a few years ago. But I always try and bring the mindfulness in as much as possible and try to
Mm.
get people there in their bodies and then come into the mind work. So people who never ever would have meditated are completely embracing it. I see it in all my classes because it feels right. They don't feel like they're wasting 10 minutes at the end of a class because they want to just keep crunching abs. They feel like, oh, this is helping everything. Tomorrow and the next day, I'll feel it. Tomorrow and the next day, my calories are going to start burning because that's when my tissues are going to start gliding and when it's going to start shifting fat cells or whatever, if you want to go into that side of things. But yeah, it's Pilates is the thing that keeps on working. So it's like you're rewiring firing patterns, and your body's only sending you pain signals because it wants to get back to a position where everything in your body can smoothly glide and interact and have conversations up and down the chains. So us even moving our fingers affects our toes if you go into how deeply everything has a chain reaction through the body. So your body wants to open up all those pathways again. And when it isn't, when you've kind of maybe got really dominant with one arm or one leg or the legs above the arms above the legs, and you start breaking up those pathways, that's when you get pain signals. And your body's only doing that to be like, oh, here's a bit of advice, we need to like deal with this before it becomes a really big issue. So people sometimes just demonize the pain and take painkillers and continue working out, and they wonder why there's a huge issue down the road. But yeah, basically what you're saying there, I know I've gone off on a big rant, but yeah, Pilates is one class will affect you for the next 3 days in a very good way, and people
Yeah.
use it that way before they're going to do a different type of a workout or after. So it can be used in lots of ways.
I think too, like you said, it's you're getting the workout, but you're also getting the um yeah, like readjustment of the body and like the mindfulness piece of it because I think like look, our culture is so like hustle, hustle, go, go, go. The more you do, the better. Like that's the only way to achieve anything. That's the only way to succeed. And if I've learned one thing in the last few years, it's like quite the opposite.
Yeah.
And even like when I found you, I was like deep in chronic disease, like psoriasis was covering my body. And I do believe like finding Pilates and coming into that type of workout in itself helped me because it calms the nervous system at the same time. It brings you back into that parasympathetic. And I think, maybe people don't sign up for it for that reason, but like you're getting all the things at once. And I think we don't realize, like you were talking about calories, like if you're not resting and relaxing, you're not giving your body a chance to catch up and to heal and to get to a place like where you can burn calories effectively and efficiently. And
Yeah.
so like people just want to speed on by, and like there's just so much that you can't see that's happening at the same time. And that's what I love. Like I think about what people think about Pilates too, with like, with ab work, they're like, oh, I'm going to get my six pack, right? And like, I think most people are aware that you don't get a six pack through doing a million crunches a day. But if not, the one thing Pilates taught me too was like even the leg moves and the arm moves, like when you readjust your body, like when I get up from a Pilates class off my mat, I'm like, I feel like I'm floating. Like my body like clicks back into place. Anything that was off, like literally, it's so funny too, because whenever I have like something that does flare up, or like I sleep weird and have a kink in my neck, like I would have historically been like, oh, well, I can't go to the gym for a few days. And now I'm like, I'm going to get on the mat, right? Because I
Yeah.
know that like there's moves I can do that will help. And I think that we're just often missing a lot of things that we think we're getting. And like the chance to slow down, like it can all be together. We can do Pilates, love Pilates, get everything we need and more from all of the same thing. And I know it's not for everyone. Everyone needs to do the workout that they enjoy and that brings them joy. Like that's a part of it too. But I think, like you said, even adding a little bit in here and there can help. Like Pilates can make you a better runner. Pilates can make you a better lifter. Pilates can like make your body more mobile so you're able to like move through your day and do things better. I just think it's a good, whether it's by itself or as an add-on. I don't know. I'm preaching preaching to the choir, but
Yeah, and what you said there as well about I think people are very hard on themselves as well, like as in if you're not like they're scared to slow down. And I think you and I were forced to through illnesses to slow down because I wouldn't have either. I was up at the crack of dawn, I'd be do weights, I was running, like I did 8K like maybe 4 times a week, nuts stuff, which is great now, but I just don't do it. But I wouldn't have stopped and trusted that my body would have done what it was supposed to do. I was just like, oh, to maintain where I am, I need to keep going, and then up late at night as well because I play music on the side. But I think people are very hard on themselves where they think that if they're not getting the results they need, they're like punishing themselves like I need to go harder. Yeah, I did XYZ, but my heart wasn't in it enough, or I didn't sweat enough, or I didn't pay enough, or I need a new trainer, or a more expensive trainer, or I need better shoes. That's a huge one. Like people, all their form being blamed on their shoes. But like you're not addressing any issue with the body. We should be able to run with no shoes. And I know that's very controversial because that's ideally not on concrete man-made roads. That would be on land, and our bodies would have adjusted for that. But we're looking in the wrong places and we're putting energy in the wrong places often. And I know our perspective and our circles also influences this because my mind the last year especially is that, oh, everyone is finally slowing down. Like when you said there, the hustle and bustle, I was like, oh, like maybe I've purposely put myself in the way of people are stripping back, slowing down, health is being viewed in a different way. We know that you need to repair. So maybe you'll tone better and actually lose more weight if you just train twice a week and then relax. That we can't keep chasing ourselves and our body has no time to repair. So it's not going to release calories, or that's different for everyone. But we've more information. Like just the lay person is way more informed. Like even 15 years ago, most people wouldn't know where a bicep was. Or if you said
mm,
hamstrings, they wouldn't. That would be a specialist area. Where now I can talk about really small muscles and people have heard of them. People are aware of the rotator cuff and some of the muscles in there and these fancy names. So as instructors, we've had to get more detailed as well. Before it was all about how do I explain this to someone without using any anatomical terms, where now it's like most people actually have it, and most of my classes are full of trainers or people who work in hospitals and they want that information as well as being able to relay it through imagery as well. But yeah. Keep going on, Rance.
that's okay. I love it. I can see your passion. Like, well, I guess speaking of that, maybe share. how you found Pilates, or how, like I would say, how it found you.
Yeah.
Because I know you had a journey, like you've talked a little bit about the things you used to do before that, but maybe share, how you came across it, how you became an instructor, how it kind of changed your life.
Yep. I had studied event management in Dublin and I was working in a job there for years, just a desk job. And I always exercised for fitness on the side, but I definitely didn't know what Pilates was. So I went into, yeah, PTs and not as a PT, but I would sign up to PTs and be in the gym and killing myself and judging myself and all of that. And I got injured then and I was thinking, just reflected on my whole life, being like, oh, I need to changed my life. So I actually got meningitis and I was in hospital. So it was really dangerous and a really big life adjustment. So when I say that, I just want to say it was a bigger kind of revelation of like, I don't want to go back. I was in hospital in Galway. I was like, I don't want to go back to Dublin to my desk job. And I wasn't happy where I was living. I wasn't happy with what I was working at. So I needed to think, but I was still paying off my student loans. And I was like, I need to think outside the box of this. So I was like, what makes me happy? So I thought, children make me happy and exercise makes me happy. So I quit my job and I became a nanny. I was like, okay, I'll work with kids. And I actually worked in a cafe where I used to dress up as Cinderella as well and just play with little kids. So this was when I was like maybe 20. And then I was like, okay, I can't afford to get back to college. So I need to think. So I messaged every gym and anything to do with fitness that I could. And I said, here's my degree. I can do marketing. I can do this, that, or the other. Will you train me in exchange for me doing marketing for your company? And everybody got back saying, no, or sorry, we can't do that, or that's not a thing that exists, or our insurance won't cover that, if they got back at all. So this went on for months and I was just like, oh, and I was working away as a nanny, absolutely loving the kids I was minding, but knowing, I just had this feeling of like, I need to do something else. So eventually a woman got back to me called Susan Church and her message was very short and she was like, interesting, let's meet for tea. I found out later that she has dyslexia and she doesn't write, she'll avoid writing at all costs. So I remember just thinking like, oh, that's really like just very, very basic few words. And I was like, okay. And I was like, is this real? Like, should I really be going and meeting a stranger on my own? Met her for tea and she had a yoga and Pilates retreat coming up. And she basically made a deal with me where she was like, if you can fill this many seats and if you can do this XYZ of marketing, I'll train you to become a Pilates instructor. And she was like, do you love Pilates, blah, blah, blah. And I had never, I didn't, I thought it was the same as yoga. So I just was like, yeah, love it. Like just completely lied and then went home. I was like, what is this? And at the time, there wasn't even much Pilates on YouTube. Like since then, that has exploded. So Move with Nicole was on YouTube. She's still there and she's amazing. So I just did loads of Pilates with her. I definitely wasn't doing it right. The whole time my neck was sore. Like I wasn't doing it right. And I was just like, I don't even know if I like this. What am I doing? But I was like, I'm on a path. I have someone who's going to train me so I can continue to pay off my student loans and I can start to be qualified in something to do with fitness. So then she qualified me and I was still a nanny, started working. I was saving all the time. So I went back to college part time to study physio. So I was studying that and teaching Pilates, and it all kind of started to come together. And with the in person training, because obviously I went from the gym to just at YouTube at home being like, I don't even like this. What am I doing with my life? But when Susan was adjusting me, I was like, okay, your neck doesn't need to hurt. This doesn't need to hurt that. And I just got obsessed with it. So it was, as you said, found me. And I don't even know if you meant to say that, but it was absolutely crazy. I'd kind of given up on it. It was months later, this email comes through. I pretended I knew what Pilates was. Do you know, like, so it really, yeah, it probably was meant to be. It's a bit wild.
I didn't know that full story and I love it. And I mean, that's one of the things I'm trying to do with this podcast is to bring people on and show, similar to like, okay, we can slow down and do Pilates. We don't have to do burn 1,000 calories a day. And we can slow down and wait for the things that are meant to find us. And we don't have to hustle and push and force and like
Yeah,
sign our souls away to things that we hate. And like, I think, I think a lot of people are seeing that. I think that maybe COVID helped with some of that. Like, like I always think like, I was just like going to a job I hated and doing things I hated. And I was like, I'll wait for the time when I have money to retire and then my life can start. And I'm like,
that
what?
never
What? Like, life's too short.
I think when you hate something as well, you treat yourself all the time. You've had a hard day at a job you don't like, and you're like, I'll just treat myself and I'll save next week. So that very rarely comes. But I think some people are different. Some people have a higher threshold. But like you getting sick and like me getting sick, and we've similar things like brain, liver, psoriasis, all that kind of the body giving you signs. Um, some people just break a bit sooner. So you and I broke a bit sooner. We're like, I'm in something I'm not happy and I can't keep going. Some people can do that for 20 or 40 years, but I knew I was 4 years in and I was like, I can't. My body kept making me sick. Like meningitis is a big rude awakening. Everything after that, mystery illness, chronic illness, they're just things that you can't ignore anymore, which is why I have the privilege of slowing down and thinking and believing that the world around me is all slowing down because that's my reality. And probably similar to you, we surround ourselves with those people, those things. I moved to the countryside. It's all Pilates now. Like that's my reality. And then I remember when you say things like that, people are probably still very stuck in the hustle, and that you have to, or you feel guilty if you don't, or there's always more money to be made, or there's more time to be used, or but it's like we need to heal. That's not the way our bodies work. We can't keep up with that.
Yeah, and I think like it's funny because I'm like aware of both worlds. Like I was talking to a friend actually at the podcast, another podcast I recorded. We were talking about like Instagram feeds and how we've like curated and like we see like inspiring quotes and cute puppies and like things. And then I was like looking at my partner's Instagram and it was like all the crap that I'd be like, oh my God, I would never be on this app if mine looks like
Yeah,
that. But I think it's the same. Like I'm in a world where I'm surrounded by other coaches and healers and people who are choosing to follow the life that's meant for them. And but then there is like the mass of people who are, I think, still struggling with a lot of that. And I
they're our clients.
but
Yeah.
like we've been there, so we get it, right? I mean, I truly believe everything we go through is a curated lesson for us to get to where we need to be and then to be able to help people in similar positions that we were in. And I think that like it's a blessing to be able to slow down and listen and like know like this isn't right for me, like what can I do or how can I make the little shifts. Again, it doesn't have to be like this massive like we both quit our jobs, but like it's different for everyone in the phase out of that potentially. And it doesn't have to be this massive, bold move or leap every time. It can be like, what are the little things you can do to feel more like yourself or allow your true self to shine and lead the way instead of like the masses and the crowds.
Yeah, and I think from the outside, it might look like people are making huge leaps. But even like you said, we quit our jobs. That took me years. Like, as in, like, you look back and you're like, oh, isn't it great that I did that? But really going through it, it was like, I didn't know where I was going with that. And even what you were saying there about Instagram and the world changing, like, one really good thing, as toxic as it can be, and we have to protect ourselves, is people, like younger people, making a living off TikTok and Instagram. So, like, our generation obviously are finding it really hard with housing, this, that, the other. Generation below us are making more money than us, and they're deciding not to get degrees. And
Hmm.
degrees are less asked for in job interviews. And where to us, it was like, it was going to a place where you actually needed 3 degrees and you needed a master's, and or you wouldn't even be like considered. So we were getting to that place. So one very good thing I think out of social media is that it's created people thinking outside the box. Like, I believe me just asking to swap a skill to be trained was thinking outside the box, because otherwise it would have taken me years to save up for college again if I ever put myself back through it. So, like, it's the same with younger people now on TikTok. They're so savvy to business and deals and collaborations and advertising, and what they're worth, what their time is worth to make a video, and what that video is worth. From the outside it looks like free money, but like, I've seen my friend has like a vintage shop and she's always working with influencers. Like, a little video that we think like, oh, it's a vanity project, this, that, or the other, not hers now, but just influencers. Like, I've seen her influencers work. It could take them 9 hours to film TikTok videos. Do you know, like, as in, they're very smart. They are. So it is nice to be able to think outside of that, that we don't have to buy into college was just getting more and more expensive. Everyone was on their second or third degree. People were having children and studying and working. and trying to keep their house clean and judging themselves when they didn't cook right or eat right or exercise. It was absolutely unsustainable. And some people are in that world, some people are in the other world, some people are between it. But I think it's given us a space. Like, I'm trying to do that with YouTube now. I didn't even mean to do this segue, but it happened naturally there. Like, I want to utilize that world as well to make the real world better. And I think that distinction is important, especially that's the bad side for younger people, but that distinction of that it's not the real world. Like, it's shopping, we're shopping, and it's great. I like that, as you said, my feed is, it's cats and it's mindfulness quotes, and then it's things that I'd actually wear or want to buy. I'm like, oh, that's handy, I didn't have to go scrolling through loads of websites, I want that thing because your phone is listening to you and it's so smart. So if you just view it as that way, like TikTok is shopping, do you know, like, or it's recipe, it's all shopping. But like, the world is changing, we can use it that way. So for the last few months, I've been trying to build a YouTube channel, which used to be a website, which again was getting increasingly expensive. So no matter how much I made, the more videos I had to put up, the more they were charging me, and I was just chasing my tail. And I loved it because it gave me a way to reach more people and to get better at filming and editing and thinking of classes and being creative. So I don't regret it costing me money in the end. But I've taken all of that across to YouTube. So all these things that I used to charge individually for are now just free on YouTube. But you can monetize YouTube when it gets to a certain point. And actually, last week I reached my first monetary earn on YouTube, which is great, which is just your 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 views. And it's very tiny, but yeah, the idea is that over the next 2 years, that'll be just an area, a stream of passive income, which, as a coach and me as a Pilates instructor, it's impossible to split yourself in two and three and four and teach as much as you would need to teach to make the income that you'd need to make. And everything is increasing. So we have to do something. YouTube channel, website, write a book, like, and this is me talking to other Pilates instructors as well. I wish I had thought about it a little bit sooner, and even the pandemic threw that off. But just instead of that grind of how many people can get into each class, how many classes can I physically teach before I collapse? And I was chatting actually to a Pilates instructor yesterday about this. Our minds go first. When you teach too many classes in a day, you're like, what did I already set up? So you just physically and mentally cannot show up that much.
Mm.
So I'm loving YouTube, and I'm just hoping that it becomes, it's me for 5 or 10 classes a week instead of me having to physically do that in the future. So yeah, that's a big rant as well.
I think there's so many things I want to comment on. So, like you were talking about kids, younger kids now, and I think it's more like I try to talk about this with, this is one of the reasons I've found and love human design is it like gives us each permission to be who we came here to be very uniquely. And I think that the thing kids now maybe more so realize is like we all have specific gifts, and
Oh
those
yeah.
gifts aren't going to be best utilized by going to school and getting a degree and following this mystery checklist that we're all supposed to follow, right? Like there's ways for us to be innovative and unique and show up like with our full weirdness. And like,
Mhm.
I think that we all can learn from that and stop comparing. Like, even as a Pilates instructor, as a coach, it's very like people are like, oh, you do these 5 things and like that's how you do it. And it's like,
And it doesn't
I
work. Yeah.
I don't know if it's like it's all like me rebelling and my Aquarius and like all the things that I've seen and I just want to do it differently. But I truly think like if we just turn off the outside world and ignore that and say like what's right for me, or like where am I being guided, or how can I do this differently, or how can I show up as more of myself, and I think that I try to be that permission for other people. And I think that historically we're like, well, we can't do that because we won't make any money doing that. And I say bullshit to that, because I know we all came here like to be ourselves with a unique purpose that only we can fulfill in the way that we can. And if we're doing that, if we're following that, if we're slowing down and listening to that, like we can all be like, well, first of all, not everyone wants to be a millionaire, but we can be successful, whatever that looks like for us. And I absolutely believe that we can do whatever it is we're meant to do, and that will lead us to like where we wanted to be, to our dream life, if you call it. But I think that it starts with, listening to the no, this isn't for me, and listening to the nudges and listening to the our bodies speaking to us. I believe, and I know you believe the same. Like I got sick for a reason, and I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't. Like it all was very purposeful and very guided. And when I finally realized, okay, maybe I just lean into this and figure out where it's taking me,
Yeah.
things got easier. And I think like, I think that's the beauty of like your YouTube channel. Like, first of all, if anyone is listening to this and is like, I want to try Pilates or I'm doing Pilates, go follow Hannah's YouTube channel. I will put it in the show notes because
Thank you.
her classes are the most amazing Pilates classes I've ever taken, especially if you're starting out. I just love the way you guide people and make sure their form is correct. And I know that like PTs are supposed to do the same thing, but like every time I'm in the gym, I see that they don't. And I think that, yeah, she has so many out there. What do you have, like 40 or 50 on there now, at least?
And there's hundreds ready to go, so
Yeah.
they're just going up. But thank you.
So definitely check that out. But I think it is like we get to do the thing we love in a way that's right for us and doesn't cause us like to hustle and force our way through and like kill ourselves in the process, right? And I think at some point, like you saw, you can't just keep trading time for money too. And like YouTube allows you, it's almost like the version of writing a book, right? It allows you to get
Yeah,
your videos out there for much less, for
yeah.
more people to see them and to get the followers, to get people listening and watching to you and subscribing and being like, oh, there's a new class. And like then you get to benefit from that because you're putting in the time to put these new classes out there. And it's not like you doing 7 classes a day and like falling into bed at night like dead.
Yeah. Oh, I just think back. Well, yeah, that I don't want to take away from other instructors because I did a lot of filming during the pandemic that I'm uploading now. Because if I was filming every week, it is so time consuming. So I don't want to take away from anyone else. I feel like I did a lot of work that now I'm just sharing on a new platform. So it feels more passive, but I don't want to take for granted that it is passive for someone else. But I remember like when I first started teaching, you're teaching like 18, 20 something classes a week. And there was one studio, I was renting a few spaces and then I was hired by a few different people. So I was all over Dublin City. Like I'd be in Blackrock in the morning and Malahide in the evening. Like I was from one side of the city to the other and I was cycling between everything. And this is not uncommon of Pilates and yoga instructors because we'd all meet for tea and lunch in between the classes as well. But you'd be up, like I had my earliest class, it was a corporate class. I can't remember which company it was now, but I was in there for 5:30 and I'd teach two groups and then they'd go off to work and I'd have like a 12 p.m. and a 1 p.m. and then they go back to work and then I'd have like 5, 6, 7 o'clock and then we'd all go to bed. But I had been doing that for months and just chasing my tail. And there was one studio that I lay down after the class and I just fell asleep. So I was woke up by the next class coming in. I was just asleep on the mat. Like it's funny. I'd do it all again though. They were like very good times, but you can do that for a few years and everyone has those years of establishing themselves and it's practice for you and practice as to how to invoice and run a business and keep control of your taxes or someone else's if you're being hired or doing it yourself. So there is just so much to learn. And I kind of think as well, when somebody is being introduced as or presents themselves as a yoga teacher or as a Pilates instructor or as a coach, like I find people like, oh, okay. And then if I say, oh, I studied physio as well, then they're like, oh, okay, now I rate you. But being a Pilates instructor, there was never anything more challenging to me than passing those exams. They are really, really hard to pass. There's a very high standard, and there's not as many ways to get qualified through Pilates as there are options with yoga. They're hard exams to pass. And then the business side, like it's as if I don't know. It is nearly like doing a few degrees because I'm not good with numbers anyway. It's like sitting down and keeping track of that, trying to navigate our tax website in Ireland, the Ross. Oh my God, it changes every time you go on the thing. And I know friends of mine have told me they do that on purpose because they want you to hire accountants, so they don't actually want regular people to use it. But it's just there's a lot to learn, a lot to do. So for me, that was always more challenging than any of my physio exams or not that it's very challenging working as a physio in terms of trying to help people, but yeah, it's just as high up there, I think. And I think, yeah, PTs, gym instructors, spin instructors, yoga instructors, but we deserve more credit. there's so much behind the scenes. People think you sit around all day and then just waltz into your class in the evening. Like it's yeah, it's different. It has to be your passion for you to keep doing it, I think.
Yeah. But that's the thing. If we're following the things that light us up, that speak to us, that we're like, this is for us, then those things that are difficult at least become a little easier, and you're so sure of your why, and like that you love it. And yeah, there's parts like especially like you said, starting out, you're the jack of all trades, you have to do everything right, and then some people can hire pieces of that out or decide not to or whatever, when you get to a certain point or when you're ready. But I think it's just it's easier to deal with the stuff that isn't as great when we know,
Yeah.
like, this is what I'm meant for and I'm
Mm.
following that. And maybe it's hard, but it's going to work out. And I think too, like, when you're a business owner and, like, we help other people along the way. I think especially women are good at that. You're like, oh, even like tax, like, oh, have you done taxes, or who do you use, or how do you navigate this? And like, we kind of like help each other out. And I think there's a lot of that goes on, that is, like, someone helped me, so I want to help someone else, and like that, just keep paying it forward,
Yeah,
like,
that's huge.
as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to because you see people get started. You probably see it in coaching as well. And it's like you're just about to get to the good part, like keep going when they're so. But I think that's true of any job and any area. Like some people, it would be their worst nightmare to work for themselves. Now it'd be my worst nightmare to work for someone else. Do you know, like as in it's just like you said, we have our own paths. But as you said, it's like the hard parts are only worth it because you're like, well, I have to do this to then continue not having to get a job in another area or whatever. Like it has to be worth it. But that's where burnout comes, and some people are better or worse than other, and that's where we're making ourselves sick when we're not listening to that voice as well. There was a
Yeah,
nice quote I heard actually, or I don't know the quote, but basically it was saying if you had an extra hour in the day, what would you do with that hour? And then you start thinking, and they're simple things, for people it'd be like, oh, I would run, or then I would paint, or then I would learn this instrument or whatever it is. And it's like you're actually answering your own question as to what's important to you and what's missing, what's there's a void in your life, because you start thinking an extra hour, or it could be similar, an extra amount of money, what would you do with it then? And once you think of that, you're like, that's actually possible in my day already, but I just
yeah.
needed to ask myself that question to get to that answer. So I think that's really nice as well.
I found a quote, and I used to say it to my boyfriend, and it just shifts everything. So, like, it's asking yourself, instead of saying, I don't have time, say it's not a priority and see how it feels. And it's so true, because it's like, whether
Yeah,
it's money or time, like, we all have priorities, and we all don't need to be using our time or spending our money in the same ways. And like, we don't need to do certain things to be cool or fit in or like gain success. We need to be listening to ourselves, and we all get to make our own choices. And at the end of the day, like, you can say I don't have time, but really you're saying it's not a priority. And
yeah,
every time I'm like, do I want to do this, or do I have time, I ask myself that question. It just shifts, because you're like, actually it is a priority. And then you're like, okay, what do I need to move around to
yeah,
make this part of my day, or to make this happen? And it reminds us that, like, we always have the power, we always have control. And we you can't do everything all at once, but you can
yeah.
absolutely do whatever it is that, speaks to you and is meant for you. It's just about realizing what your priorities are, and putting your energy behind that.
That's a really nice thought. And that comes into like self talk as well for me, where it's like, if you're saying to yourself like that, your priorities aren't important and you're fobbing it off because you don't have time, imagine that's your communication with someone else being like, oh, I can't meet you this week. I've no time. That goes on and on and on. And then we lose friendships and stuff. So imagine the impact of us talking to ourselves like that, but we have to stay living with ourselves. Of course, it's going to affect your self esteem or your trust in yourself, where you say you'll do something, you're like, oh, but I probably won't. I'm just bad at that. Like, as in, you can kind of catch that, I think, putting it out there or taking it on. Like you're telling
Yeah.
someone else they're a priority, or you're telling something you love that is or isn't a priority. So I think it's really nice. Hello.
And it can just be like, again, there's so much like hustle and go, go, go energy. And like, even like when my partner's like, oh, I need to get straight into work, I can't work out. And I'm like, mm, like, I don't have time. And I'm like, I think you don't have time not to, because if you work out in the morning and then go, you'll be like in a better mood, in a better energy. You'll probably get more done in less
Win.
time. And I think we just think it has to be this certain way, or it has to be like things that we have to do. And again, similar to Pilates, like we can't do that because that's slowing down and it doesn't make sense and it's not burning as many calories. But it's like, those are the things you probably should be doing. You're just maybe not listening to like what your body's saying, and you're thinking you should show up differently or how everyone else is showing up.
I think as well, people put like a price tag on everything, and that kind of restricts you where you're like, when I have XYZ, then I will. Because you can get up and use a hill nearby you as a good workout if you're like, I really shouldn't spend this money on a really lavish like instructor or a gym membership or whatever it is. Or Pilates and classes are so expensive. I get that as well. But it's like, well, you can go on YouTube and try it out there, even if it's like this month you're going to save money and do it that way. Like the the beautiful things in life are free. They just are: fresh air, walking, exercise, like really good exercise as well. And the nice thing as well about going on YouTube is that when you view it, you're also helping me and other instructors then to make money. So it's a win-win for everybody. But like, yeah, those excuses are just excuses. And it's a knock-on effect as well of like, I ate later, I slept later, I didn't sleep as much, I'm grumpy, I'm rewarding myself with bad food and TV because I didn't do this, that, or the other, and it's a ripple effect. So it does take strength to pull that back. So sometimes the path of least resistance starts off as the path of resistance because you just have to catch yourself. So I think asking yourself those questions: what's important to me? What do I want? How do I get there? And then just establishing that, like, I'm gonna work hard at this mentally for a month. Do you know, like, as in, I'm gonna make myself get up even if I'm tired that day, and just allow that shift to happen because it'll pay off in the future. Like the way I did all that filming years ago in the pandemic, and now I'm like, like, it's just investing in what is to come and trusting that as well. So I think sometimes listening to ourselves is hard, and then also understanding, am I pushing on the right things or the wrong things, or where do I keep going? But setting a goal and wanting to get there, I think, is important, because shifting a sleeping pattern will make you feel sick, like for a little while. But it's like, okay, I'm going to
Mhm.
trust that this will work, and that more sleep does pay off, and getting to bed earlier does pay off. There's certain things that we know, and if we just stop all the noise. But like, I think a lot of us have a lot of layers to strip away to get there. Like, I wouldn't have been able to listen to my body years ago because genuinely, and I think people listening, or you as well, might relate to this. Sometimes I'd be really tired and I'd be like, no, my brain and my body is telling me that I need chocolate 100%. And it's like, I'd make up excuses where it's like, if I start detoxing, I'll be more tired, so I'll have chocolate and I'll continue to have chocolate, and I'll start that detox next week. Like, I genuinely convinced myself it was healthy for me in that moment, as if I had diabetes or something. Like, yeah, no, I need the sugar, like as if that was based on nothing other than I just wanted it and I was making excuses. And then weeks and months go by. Not that it's bad to eat chocolate even, but you know what I mean? We just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like how to quieten the noise for yourself. But I think we can call bullshit on ourselves and be like, here, we know this, that, or the other. But yeah, a nice place for me to start is always movement. Some people are different, but like, after you move and feel really good, you're less likely to do something lazy or to try and keep yourself awake with bad foods. Like, you might be like, oh, I want to continue nourishing my mind and my body. It might just start that ripple effect, and that might be a lot of pressure for people too. So it's like, just tick off some of those boxes, some of those times. And like those times you and I quit our jobs, and that was actually years in the making, we look back at it as, I wanted to do this, I quit my job, here I am now. Because that's how it feels. You don't remember all the little bits in between. But that, yeah, nobody has these huge eureka moments out of nowhere. Maybe it's in their subconscious that they've been building it for years, but I do think everything does take those stepping stones as well.
Yeah. And it, again, the small stuff adds up, right? Like,
Yeah.
similar to you, I knew I didn't want to be in the job I was in for years before I quit, but it was just all, if I look back and I could say like, oh, I should have left sooner, but like I wasn't ready. I was still growing into the person I am today. Like, I needed everything that I was going through at the time, and just allowing, like, I feel like patience is like a lost word these days, like, and and things play out, and we just have to have a trust that it's happening even when it looks like it doesn't, because like with Pilates, things are happening beside behind the scenes that you don't realize are
Yeah.
happening at the same time, and it will all work out. It will all lead somewhere, and it will all add up and make sense one day.
Yeah. And then with your psoriasis now, does that still flare up?
No,
No, that's amazing.
yeah. It's funny, the further away I get from it, the more ahas I have, and since
Yeah.
I've found and explored and gotten to learn, now teach human design, like I can see, I literally think when we are not being ourselves, these things happen to guide us back to ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think like Jenna Zoe, who is a human design person, she has a new book out, and she said something the other day that was like so simple. And she was talking about conditioning, and she's talking about how conditioning is just the things we became that were never really us to begin with. And when you think
Oh.
about it like that, it like gives me chills every time I say it, because it's like, I do think even things like me quitting drinking and me quitting my corporate job, like I think those all added to me fully healing, because I think I
Yeah.
was doing all these things that I knew weren't meant for me. And I get that, again, we can't all just like tomorrow stop everything we don't want to be doing. Like there's things we have to do and people we have to take care of. And I get that, but I do think it's possible to get there and to move towards it, and that the little steps add up and to shift who we are and who we show up as in this world. And I think we don't give enough credit to that, and
Yeah.
being ourselves, like giving us healing.
I think that hugely as well. And sometimes, I think you're a lot further along than I am, but sometimes I'm like, I get smacked in the face with something and I'm like, I heard you already. I'm just taking a little break, do you know? But like, yeah, I feel like someone else gets away with all these things and they're taking their time. Like, why does the universe give me these huge messages when I'm
Mm.
off path and somewhere? I'm like, maybe I should do something different or act a different way, or I don't drink either. It's like maybe I should just do that. And then I get just a crazy symptom and I'm like, okay, I hear you again. But yeah, it is wild. I think we're lucky because maybe everyone has the same in different amounts, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's been very loud.
I just keep telling myself like it's happening bigger because I'm meant for that much more.
Yeah,
And we are all different, and it does affect us differently. And I do believe like, we get hints, and then when we don't, like the universe speaks louder and then
yeah.
louder. And I think it did take me a while to listen. So I'm not surprised my entire body hated me. Like, but
Oh no.
I think it's just different for different people. And we all, came here, like I said, to be a specific person, to live out a specific purpose. And it's different. Like some people came here to um, do something completely different. And to us, like that might seem like they have it easy, but we don't know what's under the surface. Like they're probably dealing with a lot of shit they're not talking about as well. And we all have
100%. Yeah.
different pains, and maybe it just shows up differently. We're just unaware. It's like the Instagram highlights, like, about 1% of someone's life.
Yeah, hugely. I always think of that if I meet someone who's really, really nice or someone who's really, really successful, I'm like, there is loads behind that. Because it takes a lot, as you said, patience is a bit lost, like to slow down and give someone a lot of time and to be kind. Like it just takes a lot these days because people get away with, oh, that wasn't rude, I was just busy. And we accept that as well, in terms of interactions. And same with someone's success. I don't just assume it was handed to them because there's so much competition everywhere for everything. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that took a lot of work. I just kind of assume the other way now.
Yeah, it's crazy because I think back even with my um, psoriasis, like it took basically 2 years to fully heal. And if you would have at the time that I got it said to me, like, this will be 2 years, like it would have been from the get go, I would have been like, all right, fine, I can handle it. Whereas like
When you
when we
don't
don't
know.
know,
Yeah.
and like the reality is we never know, like any control we think we have is an illusion.
Mhm.
But like we just have to trust in the timing, and it's going to look different for everyone, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Even my version of that was going from city living to living abroad in the sunshine to now living in the countryside. whereas I would just still be in the city. Do you know, like, as in it's just wild. Yeah. It doesn't even feel like it was planned, it just happened.
Yeah. Just,
But obviously it takes planning, like nobody
yeah,
came up and moved me for me, do you know, like, but yeah.
you were guided the way.
Yeah, I think so. Still trying to find it.
So how can people find you, work with you? What are you up to these days? I know you do in-person classes and you have the YouTube, but tell us all the things.
Yeah. So I'm in Donegal physically. So I'm in Letterkenny. So I have classes here. I'm on YouTube, Hannah's Habits on YouTube. You can do the 34 moves challenge there, or I have loads of different themed classes. I'm in and out of Dublin with workshops and weekend classes. And there's teacher training coming up there soon, so less public open stuff, but I'll be in Dublin a good bit over the next few months with the upcoming Pilates instructors. So yeah, as in my Instagram is handcake. I need to change, but I would post a lot of the upcoming stuff there. And then yeah, other than that, I'm hoping my YouTube is where everybody goes to.
Yeah, well, there's like we've talked about, and like I will keep shouting from the rooftops. There's so much there. You can do the 34 moves challenge. There's loads of different time, right? If you have 20 minutes versus 40 minutes, like there's so much to choose from. So just try it out.
Yeah.
If nothing else, to show Hannah some love because she's amazing.
It's playing in the background in your house, yeah.
Just leave it on like
Yeah.
a
On a
cue
loop.
of
Yeah.
well, thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally got to do this,
Oh, thank
and
you so
the
much.
world can hear your magic in a couple of weeks. And yeah, thanks for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've learned loads from you as well. It's inspiring.
I feel like selfish sometimes in not like in a good way of getting to do this podcast because I just love
No,
talking to people.
no, but that's exactly the kind of person that should be doing a podcast. That's amazing. Imagine you hated people, that'd be different. No, that's great.
uh,
I can't wait
well,
to
thank
listen
you
to
so
all of the
much.
episodes. Yeah, thank you.
And everybody else, we will see you in the next episode.